The Radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Wednesday, October 15th. I hope everybody is having a good week so far. There's Jonathan in with the first sticker. Thank you, Jonathan. And we've got a bunch of stories to cover today. I will remind you there'll be no show tomorrow. I am traveling. And then Friday and Saturday, I'll be doing shows from the road. Gods of the Wi-Fi, if the gods of the Wi-Fi allow it. And then, let's see, we'll be no show on Sunday because I'm traveling back. And then Monday, Tuesday. So just remember, no show tomorrow. Shows on Friday, Saturday from my hotel room. All right. Let's see. No conferences. Not traveling for conference. Friend Harper says you will pray for the Wi-Fi gods. That is always a good thing. I mean, the Wi-Fi gods are all powerful, and praying to the Wi-Fi gods or the internet gods more broadly is a good thing. Good thing. It's like Pascal's wager. What do you got to lose, right? All right. Let's jump in. So Politico has a story today that's kind of really reverberating through Twitter quite a bit. So, I spend probably way too much time on X, Twitter, and this is kind of the leading story, it seems, on Twitter. Is the story in Politico. Politico basically got a trove of chats from a Telegram channel of Young Republicans. Young Republicans is a nationwide organization of Republicans. I've spoken at some Young Republican chapters years and years and years ago. I spoke at the New York City Young Republicans. I've spoken at Young Republican groups at a variety, at a bunch of different universities over the years. So this is like, there's a Young Democrats on campus, Young Republicans, but it's also beyond, it's not just at universities, it is generally a national organization, Young Republican National Federation. It's 15,000 member, and you have to be between the ages of 18 and 40 to be part of this. Anyway, they got their hands on a private chat that spans, I don't know, a huge amount of data, and this is primarily kind of people in leadership positions within the Young Republican Association, the Young Republican, so this is leaders from New York, Kansas, Arizona, Vermont, and other places. It's 2,900 pages of chats shared among about a dozen Millennium and Gen Z Republicans, and this is in the period between January and mid-August. It has a lot of it has to do with internal politics within the Young Republicans and their attempt to this is a group that is very MAGA, and their attempt to kind of take over the Young Republicans from a very pro-Donald Trump platform. Some of them are actually working for the Trump administration. Some of them are working for the various chapters of the Young Republican Association. Anyway, these chats are filled with racist, anti-Semitic, anti-gay, kind of a positive commentary on rape, just horrible stuff that is spewed by these guys in conversation. And there's something called they love the watermelon people talking about blacks, obviously. There's a great I Love Hitler, although, if the full context of that statement, it is said kind of in irony. There's they're giving nationalists too much credit and expecting the Jews to be honest. Everyone that votes no on a particular thing is going to be gas chambered. And on and on and on it goes. He also hates Jews with a bunch of likes on that one. Pretty disgusting, racist, anti-Semitic, sexist, pro-violence stuff that's in there. Now, granted, I mean, they're just chatting, right? This reminds me of the comment I guess Trump made about grabbing women by the, and everybody was like, yeah, well, it's just locker room chatter. That's our guys talking in the locker room. And I never talked like that in a locker room. I don't know if something's wrong with me. My testosterone's high, I promise. And yet I never talked like that in a locker room. And this is like the same thing. It's like, oh, they're just young. This is just how they talk. Really? Racist, anti-Semitic garbage like this is just how we talk. This is what you throw out there when you're discussing stuff, and you're doing this in writing. So this is on a chat. Just horrific. And we'll talk a little bit about partially where I think this come from and how this has been kind of legitimized. But it really is disgusting. And again, these are not junior people. These are senior people. These are former. I don't think there are any current former congressional staffers. And it's really sad to me because I used to give talks to congressional staffers. There were years in the early teens where I would go to Washington, D.C. on a regular basis, and I think we did a series for a few years of talks in front of Republican congressional staffers, and it was great, and I really enjoyed that. And some of these people are former congressional staffers. Something has changed in the Republican Party. Something dramatic has changed in the Republican Party, and in people who are activists around the Republican Party. There's been a legitimization of racism. There's been a legitimization of anti-Semitism that has been brought into the party and is now just part of it. I mean, here's one guy who I guess was part of this chat and is trying to defend it all, and he says, anyone in this article, that is all the people in the chat, is a patriot, and everyone attacking them is a dirty, treacherous, impotent, cowardly bundle of sticks, right? So people actually, defending this. These are good guys. And I really think this is where the Republican Party is heading. I think that, the racist kind of anti-Semitic stuff. But I think this has all been, if you will, this was all legitimized during the Trump first term with the alt-right. You remember the alt-right? But the alt-right was always viewed as the fringe. And then you had Charlottesville. And Charlottesville was basically explicit racist and explicit anti-Semites going out there. And basically Trump, and I'm not going to argue this, because I've done whole videos explaining how true this is. But basically Trump giving them a thumbs up. Not that Trump's an anti-Semite or racist, he's not. But Trump is quite happy to have a big tent that includes racists and anti-Semites. And he gave them a thumbs up and he winked at them and he said, yeah, good people on both sides. And I've analyzed that and everything. So it wasn't just a, it wasn't, it was exactly what it sounds like. It was exactly, you guys are okay, don't worry about it, to the racists. And indeed, those people, the people who marched there, are now much more mainstream. The alt-right is much more part of the Republican Party. It's much more mainstream on the right. The Groypers are much more part of a coalition on the right. And you can see that in the attempts of people this morning, like Matt Walsh and J.D. Vance, to excuse the young Republicans. I mean, basically, J.D. Vance has said he's not going to condemn them because Democrats do things that are a lot worse. Now, it's true. The current candidate, the Attorney General, current candidate for Attorney General of Virginia, is a guy who, in a chat, made comments about wanting to kill the children of the opposition, of Republicans. Just horrible stuff. I mean, this guy should resign. He should certainly apologize, and voters should definitely vote this guy out. I mean, nasty, horrible stuff. And nobody has denied this, that he said all this stuff. So he actually said it. So J.D. Vance is saying, he's quoting the guy from Virginia saying, this is far worse than anything said in a college group chat. And the guy who said it could become the AG of Virginia. I refuse to join the pearl clutching when powerful people call for political violence. This is not a college chat. These are relatively senior, young, but senior people. Young meaning under 40. I don't know how many of you who are under 40 consider yourself just the same as college kids. These are young Republicans who have really senior positions within the Republican Party, certainly within the kind of young Republicans. And J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States, will not condemn him. Just like at the end of the day, Donald Trump did not condemn the marches in Charlottesville. This is Republican leadership basically, yeah, okay, we need these guys. Matt Walsh basically came out and said, I'm not going to condemn them. He wrote, the right doesn't stick together. That's our biggest problem, by far. Conservatives are quick to denounce each other, jump on dog piles, disavow, attack their allies. I said a few weeks ago that we all need to band together in the wake of Charlie's death. And the answer I got back from a lot of people on the right was basically, no. Well, okay then, guys. We'll just lose instead. The left will keep up the united front and defend their guys no matter what, while we keep throwing each other to the wolves in every opportunity. Great plan. So Matt Walsh is basically saying, yeah, I mean, racists, anti-Semites, bring them on. What the hell? The Candace Owens, the Tucker Carlson, the what's his name? The Groyper guy, who's a real anti-Semite. Yeah, one big happy tent because we need to defeat the left. Whatever to defeat the left. The only thing that matters in life is to defeat the left. And the fact that these attitudes, and maybe Matt Walsh just shares these attitudes, the fact that these attitudes, Nick Fuentes is the guy I was thinking of, Nick Fuentes. The fact that these attitudes are only growing. Nick Fuentes was a nobody a few years ago, and now he's got millions of followers. Candace has become a crazy nutcase, a complete and utter anti-Semitic conspiracy theory wacko, has millions of followers. Tucker Carlson has become a complete nutty anti-Semitic freak show, with demons scratching him in the night, with millions of followers. I mean, people whose these ideas would have been fringe 8 years ago, 10 years ago, certainly 15 years ago, now are becoming more and more mainstream. And Matt Walsh wants to embrace them even further in the name of victory. And I'm sure maybe, some people, or at least used to be, on my chat would want us to participate in these big tents and embrace them all in the name of defeating the left, because that's all that matters. The Reagan caucus tweeted in response to the young Republicans, J.D. Vance and Matt Walsh once again showed that they are tribalists with a no enemies to my right mentality. And Matt Walsh replies, yes, we want to win. I know that concept is confusing to you. So bring in the Nazis, bring in the racists, bring in the Ku Klux Klan. What the hell? We want to win. That's all that matters. And the fact that they grow in numbers because we have sanctioned them, we have promoted them, we have given them the thumbs up, we who are supposedly credible and the legit part of the Republican Party are sanctioning these evil. The fact that they will grow, yeah, that doesn't matter. The only thing that matters, literally, the only thing that matters is that we win, that we beat the left. That's it. I mean, there's now a fad among Republicans, among certain people on the right, to quote Carl Schmitt, the Nazi Carl Schmitt, and that's been excused by a bunch of people, I think including Matt Walsh. These ideas, these fascist, horrific racist ideas are gaining more and more and more traction on the right. And yes, I know, they're also gaining traction on the far left and have been part of the far left's agenda for a long time. But this is my point. We have two enemies, not one, two enemies, left and right. Matt Walsh continues in a different tweet. When it comes to fighting the left and defeating the people who want to kill me and my family and piss on my grave, that's the left, I assume, I will unite with anyone on the right, even those I don't like and who don't like me. If you think this is unprincipled or morally compromised, then you simply don't understand how to fight and actually win a battle. A fractured conservative movement will fail. Only a united front will succeed. And succeed in what? To bring about what? To achieve what? What is the goal? What is it? Once the left is defeated, what happens then? I believe that a united right, remember, by the way, that the rally in Charlottesville, not accidentally, the rally in Charlottesville was called Unite the Right. Unite the Right. That's what they called themselves, right? And now Matt Walsh is saying, let's unite the right with the people marching in Charlottesville. Let's join them. And once you win, what do you get? Who's left? He continues, if you reject this invitation, that's fine. It's your right. It won't be the first time I've reached out my hand and got a hearty fuck you in response. It doesn't hurt my feelings, but it does hurt the cause. What's the cause? One has to ask, what is the cause? Defeat the left. Yep. Let's establish an evil an evil alternative to the evil. And somehow this is an improvement. That somehow this makes things better, right? Now, to their credit, the Young Republicans organization seems to have come out. Its board of directors have come out and written the following: "We are appalled by the vile and inexcusable language revealed in the Politico article published today. Such behavior is disgraceful, unbecoming of any Republican, and stands in direct opposition to the values our movement represents. Those involved must immediately resign from all positions within their state and local Young Republican organizations. We must hold ourselves to the highest standards of integrity, respect, and professionalism." Now, yay! This is good. Good for them. Good for them. Some Republicans, adults, Matt Walsh, J.D. Vance, are not. And the only reason I bring up Charlottesville is because this is the consequence. This is the consequence of Trump's wink, wink, you're all okay you're all part of the big tent. Anyway, big story. Somebody else noting that people in those chats joked about how rape is epic, called slavery mega based. Yeah, it would be kind of cool if J.D. Vance, Vice President of the United States, these United States, actually condemned that. That would be cool. Said something negative about it. Anyway, let's see. Here's somebody else writing. A bunch of young people are probably feeling very exposed and guilty and worried about their futures because their edgy group chat got leaked. Edgy, note. Do not give in. Do not voluntarily resign or even apologize. You did nothing wrong. Frankly, the jokes that I've seen aren't even as bad as the stuff the left says in complete sincerity. Of course, whataboutism. Your only response to people asking about it should be, cry about it. I'm not apologizing for using racy language in private, while I hear the egregious hate constantly from the mainstream media, Democrats, and even universities. No, young Republicans said they want to kill the children of Democrats. We didn't celebrate the murder of a prominent liberal. Your outrage is fake, and we won't be distracted from our mission to save the country from the real bad guys. Save the country from the real bad guys and hand it over to bad guys. To bad guys. All right, I'm just going to answer this question because it's relevant, and it's just going to be on my mind if I don't just answer it and get it out of the way because it's so vile and just so despicable. All right, Harrison says, "Wow, Trump has finally brought peace to the Middle East." And instead of mentioning that here, Yaron is still mediating or whatever on whether or not he said that neo-Nazis are very fine people, worse than CNN. Yeah, I'm much more objective than CNN. I hate Trump much more than CNN. I objectively understand why Trump is much worse than CNN. And about bringing peace to the Middle East, you might want to tell that to the dozens of Palestinians who were shot in the head over the last 2 or 3 days. And you might want to tell that to the Israelis who, still haven't gotten the bodies of their loved ones back. Bringing peace to the Middle East is going to require a little bit more than what has happened so far. And I've been talking nonstop about the bringing peace to the Middle East without defeating Hamas and without, crushing them. I've been talking about that nonstop since it happened. That has been the top of my news. So you come in here, pretending that you understand anything or know anything. You basically have no clue what I've said. And you just want to, you want to what? Denounce me as being anti-Trump? Yeah, I'm very anti-Trump. Trump is horrific as a president, as a political leader, as a human being. And, he did something half decent in the Middle East. Not bring peace to the Middle East, but he got the hostages released. I'm all for that. That's great. I mean, if you really want a peace in the Middle East, he'd unleash the Israelis now to actually disarm Hamas and destroy it. That would bring peace to the Middle East. And he wouldn't have stopped Israel from bombing Iran. He would have let them continue so that the Iranian regime could have fallen. A lot of things he could have done even better than he did to bring peace to the Middle East. But, you will spin everything. My guess is that bringing peace to the Middle East is just one among a million things that you think that Trump has done phenomenally well, and you're excited about everything he does and everything he said. Because my guess is, I don't know Harrison, but my guess is just by the tone of his thing that he suffers from Trump mindlessness syndrome, and is just part of a tribe. Trump rallied the Arab countries to put pressure on Hamas and should get credit for that. That he got Hamas to agree to release the hostages is a big plus. Now, The real challenge is going to be to get them to disarm. And if, by the way, if in order to get the Arab countries to put pressure on Hamas to release the hostages, Trump has promised, for example, Turkey F-35s. Yeah, I don't know how good that trade-off it will be in the very long run. Paul reminds me that the actual one is Trump's zombie syndrome. I agree, that's better. So I have a feeling Harrison might suffer from Trump's zombie syndrome. Not the first person, and certainly not the last. A large number of Americans, a significant number of Americans, maybe a majority of Republicans now suffer from Trump's zombie syndrome. So this is a virus that has infected a very large number of human beings around the country and the world, really. It's a global phenomenon. All right. Yeah, young Republicans, what do you do? What can you do? Supreme Court today heard a significant case regarding the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and in particular the Voting Rights Act that is part of the Civil Rights. This is an act, again, part of the Civil Rights, 1965 Voting Rights Act, which is part of the big civil rights legislation of the time. So not part of the Civil Rights Act itself, but part of the civil rights legislation at the time. It was also an act that was reinforced by Ronald Reagan in 1982, signing in law a follow-up act that kind of reinforced the voting rights section. What is this? What is this? So this is again the Voting Rights Act of '65, as amended by the law Reagan signed in 1982. This is what it basically does. It prohibits any state election law that, quote, results in a denial or abridgment of the right of any U.S. citizen to vote on account of race or color, unquote. Now that sounds pretty straightforward and pretty good and not problematic. That sounds basically fine, right? The problem is the way it's been interpreted, because in a Supreme Court case in 1986, the court held that this language requires states to redraw their legislative maps under certain circumstances and redraw them so that minorities do not get supposedly disenfranchised by having maps drawn in a way that the minority will always be the minority in a state, even though they might be a majority in a particular area. The minority in the state, the districts will be drawn in such a way that they will never get representation, that they will never be represented in a sense. So the court, I guess, at the time stated two factors to determine when this redistricting kind of to allow for, if you will, minority representation was allowed. So one was whether a state is residentially segregated by race, so people are living in clusters based on race, and whether the state's voters are racially polarized, that is, blacks vote Democratic and whites vote Republicans, for example. So voters of one race tend to vote for one party, and voters of another race tend to vote for another party. So if those two standards, the clustering, and then the different races votes for different political parties, then you need to draw the maps in a way that allows the clusters of the minority to have representation, to be able to vote in their political candidate. This has resulted in the fact that many southern states that are majority white but have significant minority populations, significant black populations primarily, have redrawn their maps in order to give, if you will, blacks certain districts that are safely theirs. And for example, in the case in front of the Supreme Court right now, Louisiana Republican legislature initially drew up a map that included 1 out of 6 districts that was black majority, right? But blacks constitute 30% of the population of Louisiana. So if you just went based on the percentages, then they should have more than 1 out of 6. They should have more like 2 out of 6, right? So a lower court, applying the 1986 Supreme Court ruling, struck down the map and said this, and the state responded by drawing new maps, which created 2 black districts. And of course, this is now in front of the Supreme Court, whether this new map with 2 black districts is okay, right? Now, the problem with all of this is that the Constitution basically prohibits, or a correct, I think, interpretation of the Constitution, that basically prohibits discriminating based on race. So discriminating based on racial characteristics. And now, in order to address past discrimination, or in order to address existing discrimination, we are discriminating in terms of race. And while courts in the past accepted this logic based on the Civil Rights Act and kind of legislation and court rulings from the 1960 on that basically viewed affirmative action, that basically viewed, in order to address past discrimination, we have to do reverse discrimination in order to fix things. Well, this group of conservatives in this court, I think, has had it with that logic, has had it with that thinking. Basically, I think these conservatives are saying, look, there has to be a limit to that. That was in the 1960s. There were Jim Crow laws. Maybe it made some sense then to do this, but at some point, the reverse discrimination should be over. At some point, you've addressed past concerns, and you need to be able to move forward. And they are, it seems, slowly dismantling the whole reverse discrimination agenda out there, and I think justifiably in a positive way. The different, it really does look like the different justices had different reasons why, but it really does look like they are going to rule that Section 2 of the Voting Act, which has been interpreted as requiring this gerrymandering in order to provide minorities with their own districts, they're going to rule it unconstitutional. Now, of course, what Republicans will do here is that they will redraw district maps. They will gerrymander district maps all over the South, basically to give whites a majority, not because they're whites, but because they're Republican. And since all these states are controlled by Republican legislature, they can get away with that. And that is not deemed racist, even if some of it is motivated by racism. It's not deemed racist because it's focused on, partisan politics, which the court allows. The court allows gerrymandering of districts for partisan reasons. It doesn't allow gerrymandering of districts for racial reasons. And the idea here is that these districts today are done because of race, not because of politics, and therefore they're illegitimate. Now, I don't know what the solution is. I find the whole drawing of these districts and creating this gerrymandering opportunities and these weird shaped districts and stuff, I find that the whole thing bizarre, and the ability for a legislature where one political party has a majority to be able to shape these districts any way they want to get the result that they want in advance seems to me bizarre somehow. I don't know what the solution is. Some kind of independent commission, which is what I think California had for a while and some other states had for a while. Independent commissions that draw up the districts while trying to be bipartisan and not being overtly trying to have one political party win everything or whatever, something like that, doing it based on population. Seems to be the right thing, the right approach, but that's not how American law is written. You can gerrymander, and it's been ruled constitutional, and it's happening all the time. And both Democrats and Republicans do it. So I guess we're stuck with this. I do think that the Voting Rights Act should be this use of it, this interpretation of it, should be overturned by the Supreme Court. So I think this will be good. I don't know that the outcome will be good. The outcome will be, districts rigged based on, I still think based on race, but based on kind of race in favor of whites. But I don't think you can avoid that. I think that's just a political reality. I wish that, our adherence to particular political parties was not divided racially in the South or anywhere else. And maybe one day we'll live in a world in which it's not. This is a step towards that world because I think that the kind of reverse discrimination that is part of the Civil Rights Act and part of the Voting Act and part of the way these have been interpreted in affirmative action have only increased racism, not decreased it. Ayn Rand predicted it in the 1960s when these bills were being passed. So I hope the Supreme Court reverses this. I fear that this is a huge win for Republicans when I don't really want Republicans to have a big win. A big win not based on ideology, but a big win based on race, which is sad and offensive. But that's what it looks like. So, we'll see. But it does look like this will fall. It looks like it'll be a 6-3 majority opinion, getting rid of the 1986 interpretation of the Voting Rights Act that created gerrymandering based on race. So good riddance for that. Again, Republicans are likely to gain anywhere from half a dozen to 15 seats in the House of Representatives as a consequence of this. This is going to reduce the probability that they lose in 2026. I very much want Republicans to lose in 2026. So, that is unfortunate, but you have to go by the law, right? You have to go by what's right in terms of the Constitution, not by your particular political preferences. But the whole gerrymandering thing is corrupt. There has to be a way to fix it. I'm not sure how you do it, but there has to be some way. Somebody has to figure out how to fix it and get rid of it. I think an independent commission that is based on trying to divvy up the state based on population density or something like that is the right way to go. But I don't know, and I don't know that it's worked in any of the states where it's being tried. All right, in spite of efforts by the Trump administration to, over the weekend, to try to say, the trade war with China is not that bad and things are going to be okay, the trade war only seems to be escalating. It does not seem to be getting better. Today, Secretary Bessent called the Chinese trade negotiator, the senior Chinese trade negotiator, he called him unhinged. They are in the midst of throwing accusations one at the other and at escalating this. Now, look, I have no side in this. They're both nuts, right? I mean, as I've said many times, responding to somebody imposing tariffs on you by imposing tariffs on them is like somebody shooting themselves in the knee and you shooting yourself in the knee as well, or shooting yourself in the hip. It just doesn't make any sense. It's stupid. The Chinese getting into a trade war with the United States is dumb policy and it is not going to help the Chinese. But I also know that it's the United States who started this. And maybe you could argue there is a The goal is ultimately to de-link from China, and that's a good thing because China is a potential enemy of the United States. I still say that if the goal is to de-link, there are much, much better ways to do that, much more rational ways to do it, and ways that do not descend into the stupidity of a trade war. Neither party can win because trade wars, by definition, are lose-lose. But the United States is going to lose a lot, has the potential at least to lose a lot. Now, for example, I mean, China has put on all these restrictions on rare earth material, and in the short run, this is going to inflict significant pain on the United States and on much of the West, and on everybody who is importing rare earth materials from China, which is basically everybody uses rare earth material. But the reality is that these restrictions are going to create massive incentives for Western countries to go out and mine for rare earth materials themselves. There are vast quantities of rare earth material in Ukraine, in Scandinavia, probably all over Europe, certainly in the United States, in the mountain region in the United States, in places like Greenland, probably in Alaska, and off the shore, I think in the ocean, off the shore of Japan, massive deposit of rare earth materials, and probably lots of other places, Africa, other parts of Asia. And now you've just created a massive incentive for people like JP Morgan, for example, as I told you yesterday, to allocate significant amount of capital to going out there and finding this because the profit margin has just gone up, right? It's like making drugs illegal and suddenly the profit margin goes up. So a lot of people go into the drug trade. I'm talking about illegal drugs. And now you made rare earth materials super expensive. Profit margins go up. A lot of capital is going to flow to find alternatives to China. So long term, this is really, really stupid policy for China. It's kind of one of these things that you can only, it's like one of these guns you can only shoot once. After that, the other party gets a bigger gun and you're in trouble. So, I mean, maybe the Chinese are doing the West a favor by, in a sense, forcing us, forcing Western companies, forcing Western governments, forcing Western investment houses to go out there and find alternatives to what the Chinese have. Maybe this will work out in that sense. But this is so non-strategic on behalf of the Trump administration, which they should have done the reverse. First, find the resources and start mining them and start refining them. And then if you want to get into trade war, get into trade war. I said that yesterday. So I just want to emphasize how much of a lose-lose this really is. And now, at least according to breaking news, and again, I don't know if this is completely accurate, but rumors are that the Trump administration is now considering setting price floors on a range of industries. They can't go below a certain price in order to combat price manipulation, dumping by Chinese companies. More government intervention in our economy, more attempts to control our economy, more efforts to raise prices on all of us. I guess tariffs are not enough. I mean, I remember when everybody called Kamala Harris a communist and a socialist, and since then we've got nothing but socialist policies coming out of the Trump administration. Here's another one. So this trade war, with the U.S. investing in Intel and the U.S. government investing in rare earth material companies, and the U.S. government wanting to take positions in companies now, and Trump creating a what is it? Trump RX, a pharmacy that you can buy drugs direct from the government. Just socialism 101 in kind of such a stupid way. So Besant and the rest of the Trump administration is now trying to rally our allies in order to deal with this new threat from China, with this trade war from China. Trump administration realizes they can't win this war alone. They need allies. But haven't we just spent the last 6 months alienating those allies, putting tariffs on them, telling them how terrible they were, not wanting to buy their goods, and penalizing India, for example, throwing it in the arms of the Chinese and the Russians. It's just going after them constantly. Right. So, yeah. So here is so Bessett now is going to say, we're going to speak to our European allies, to India and the Asian democracies. We're going to have a fulsome group response to this because bureaucrats in China cannot manage the supply chain or the manufacturing process for the rest of the world. That is true. But I wish you hadn't, again, planning, strategy. If China's really the issue, and why you've got tariffs on the rest of the world? Why are you alienating the rest of the world? Why are you alienating Europe? Why are you alienating India? Why are you alienating Canada and Mexico? What is the point of that if you want to address problems with China? No answer from them. Certainly no answers from Harrison, because Trump is a genius and everything he does is 5D chess. Stop it, Yaron. You just don't understand. You just can't think strategically enough. This is so deep, it's hard to get our heads around it. So the trade war continues and will continue to continue. It's not going anywhere. On top of this, we have the government shutdown. The Trump administration is using the government shutdown to do a number of things. One is to fire thousands of federal employees. Now, let me be clear. I am all for laying off federal employees and firing them. Now, whether this is legal or not is again, is this job of Congress? Not? Can the executive do this? I don't know. We'll see. The courts will chime in. But firing government employees, just like Doge did, I'm all for. I'm not sure they have a strategy around who they're firing other than, as Trump said, I think, we're going to fire government employees that work for Democratic, kind of the pet projects of Democrats. So, we'll see who ultimately gets fired, and I know people are being fired from, what he calls Democratic-sponsored programs. But that's included Health and Human Services, which is run by none other than RFK. We've seen people from the Treasury being fired. IRS. I'm all for the IRS shrinking and becoming less efficient. I'm a huge advocate for that. Although, they're going to have problems with deficits. They've, of course, fired people from the Department of Education, which shouldn't exist. They've fired people from the Office of Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity. I'm all for shutting that office down. Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, shut it down. As well as I said, the IRS, some Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, another one that should be shut down. But all of this should be shut down. The big, beautiful bill should have had all this being shut down. It's sad that Republicans can't get this stuff done through legislation. They have to do it. They have to wait for the government to shut down and then use that opportunity to do it. The other thing is that they're cutting spending by not providing funding to programs that Congress has approved that are in Democratic districts. So, so far, in terms of programs that have shut down, they have cut $27.24 billion from Democratic districts, 87 of those, and they've cut less than $1 billion from Republican districts. So they're basically using the government shutdown and the cutting spending and the laying people off for political retribution, for going after stuff that they couldn't get done through legislation. And while, again, I'm all for cutting government and shredding these departments and getting rid of all this, bring that chainsaw over, I don't like it being done like this. This should have been done through legislation. This should have been what Trump fought Congress over. The big, beautiful bill should have been a bill that shrunk government spending significantly because it shut down these programs and shut down these departments And whatever departments they want, if they shut it down through legislation, I'll be 100% supportive of it. And then you can fire all the people who belong to those departments. But what they want is to elevate the executive, to give him unlimited power, to neuter Congress, to make Congress completely impotent and ineffective. And that I really, really worry about. That I think is very, very, very dangerous. And we will pay for that in the future. And in the present, but in the future. As our government becomes more and more authoritarian because it becomes more and more centralized over the character, the personage of the president, being left or right or whatever. And right now, you know, he's cutting stuff, but what if he wants to grow certain stuff and he doesn't have to ask Congress? He just reallocate. Oh, we got some extra tariff money. Let's spend it on stuff I want. To hell with Congress. I mean, the genius of our political system, the division of powers, the separation of powers, the weakness of every branch alone, that is being diminished. And that is very, very, very dangerous. And that is much more important than any particular spending on any particular program. But that's what Republicans want. They want power. And they want a strong executive. And they think if they get that, they can win every election from now until forever. And maybe they can. But that too is scary because it's not that they're always going to cut good stuff. They might cut bad stuff. They might very well start increasing funding for bad stuff that supports their particular economic, moral, or philosophical agenda. Scary days for freedom in America. All right, a few other stories. So Milei, sadly, certain aspects of Milei's programs have not been going well. And, they haven't been going well because I think he didn't go far enough. And I think that his loss in the election, a month or two ago, basically made people worry about his ability to follow through on some of the things that he's promised. I think one of the most important things in his agenda was dollarization. Basically eliminating the peso and eliminating speculation around the peso, the concern about the peso, moving the entire economy to dollars, getting rid of a central bank, I think it might have been painful. And maybe he couldn't do it because the IMF, which gave him a big grant, gave him a huge amount of money, wouldn't allow it. That is quite possible. But it would have allowed taking off the whole monetary question off the table. Because what's happened since he didn't win the election is that the peso has plummeted. That people are selling pesos. They're still manipulating it. That is causing the economy to struggle. The economy is actually shrinking right now in Argentina after a period of real growth. And he's really struggling. And his public support has gone down from 50 to 40%. And of course, we're coming up in 2 weeks, 11 days actually, on 26th, for the big election. This is the election that counts for parliament in Argentina. He only has 15% of parliament on his side right now. He needs much more of that to be able to do anything meaningful moving forward. And if he fails in these elections, then it's hard to see how his agenda moves forward. Anyway, the consequence, what's happened over the last few weeks, is that Trump has stepped in with a bailout plan for the peso. Basically, the U.S. Treasury is now going to buy pesos in order to keep its value up. They supposedly are willing to dedicate up to $40 billion. $40 billion of your taxpayer money to bail out the Milei administration by propping up the value of the peso. Now, I don't think the United States should ever do this. I don't think this is appropriate for government to do. I don't think you should do it domestically. I certainly don't think we should do it for other countries. And again, I don't think it should have been done. The government should do it. But now Trump has come out and said, not only are we going to do this, but if Milei loses the election, and he didn't define what lose means, but if Milei loses the election in October, we won't support the peso. So initially when this was announced, the stock market in Argentina went up quite a bit because they thought, oh, this is great. This is going to help our economy. This is going to bail out the government in a sense. Now, whoa, what happens if Milei doesn't win based on some definition of winning that Trump has in his mind? They won't bail us out. So there's a massive amount of volatility involved here. Again, it's just Trump trying to put his finger on the weight in terms of the election. Hey guys, if Milei wins, you get I'll give you a bunch of money. So trying to sway the election in a particular direction. So Milei's in trouble. Milei's in trouble because it's very, very difficult to control a hyperinflated currency because much of its value is dependent on people's sentiment, and that moves around all the time. All right, two other quick stories, and then I'll go to your questions. Not a lot of questions today, so I have a hard stop in an hour, but we might have an even shorter program today because we're not even making the first hour goal. Come on, people, we should at least make the first hour goal. That should be like base. We should never miss the 250 first hour goal. The Congress won't allow him to implement all of the goals, all of his agenda. I get that. And maybe he's done all that he can. And now it's up to the election. It's up to the Argentinian people. And we will see how the Argentinian people vote. I'm not blaming Milei. I wish he could have dollarized. Maybe there was no way to dollarize. Maybe it was just impossible. That is absolutely possible. But we will see. We will see what he does and what kind of impact this has. All right, Russia. It really does seem like the administration is really shifting on Russia. We talked about this yesterday about providing them with weapons and cruise missiles. Zelensky is coming to Washington on Friday. We'll see what happens then. Hegseth, who's been very anti-Ukraine, and together with J.D. Vance and quite leaning towards Russia in the past, has shifted completely now. Basically, this is a quote from him today saying, it's time to end the war and come to the peace table, or, this is a threat to Russia, the United States War Department stands ready to do our part in ways that only the United States can do. Now, it's unclear exactly what he means there, of course, but it seems like a real threat. And I think this is partially about delivering weapons. But it's probably more than that. It's backing up our allies. It's maybe a bigger commitment to NATO. Trump the other day said that if a NATO country, I can't remember which NATO country, was invaded, he would support the United States intervening, reversing things that he said a few months ago. I mean, that's the thing about Trump. Who knows what he'd actually do? Who knows what his position is tomorrow? Who knows? Nobody knows, including our enemies. And maybe that's an asset. Maybe. I doubt it. But maybe that's a positive thing. Hard to tell, given given the whiplash we get as he changes his mind constantly. But this is again another change of mind, which is positive. Maybe Trump's learning on the road and in action and actually becoming better. At least his positions are becoming better. Whatever led him to be more pro-Ukraine, go for it. I'm happy to have him be pro-Ukraine rather than be pro-Russia. I think it was the fact that Putin humiliated him after their meeting in Alaska, even though all you pro-Trump people justified the Alaska meeting and were all gung-ho and were convinced that Trump was going to get Putin. I think Putin clearly humiliated Trump, and I think even Trump was not immune from seeing that, because it's all about Trump. It's all about, again, this is a narcissistic behavior. Putin humiliating him has caused him to shift away from Russia and towards Ukraine. Good, whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. Finally, it's kind of a cool story, a positive story, and kind of shows the potential if we wanted in terms of nuclear power. This is, I'm reading from the news story. The U.S. Army on Tuesday unveiled the Janus program, a more than 6-year effort by the Army and the Pentagon's Defense Innovation Unit. It's a great unit, the Pentagon's Defense Innovation Unit, with the goal of developing and constructing hundreds of state-of-the-art small nuclear reactors to power military bases across the United States. This is, based on a Wall Street Journal story. The reactors, dubbed micro-reactors by the Army, will generate less than 20 gigawatts of electricity, enough to power a small town or military base, and will be small enough to be transported by either ship or aircraft to remote military locations overseas, such as islands in the Pacific. Secretary of the Army Daniel P. Driscoll stated that they hope to have the first reactors operational at bases across the country by September 2028. Now, this is huge. The military has always been at the forefront of nuclear power reactors. We've got submarines that are nuclear powered. We've got aircraft carriers that are nuclear powered, but we can't build a nuclear power plant on land somehow. So this is really, really good. I don't think they need to be well guarded. I don't think these are kind of the nuclear reactors that explode or pose a real threat. It depends on the particular technology that they use. But this is fantastic. They're small. The damage you could do if you did blow one up would be small. They're portable. And this is exactly what we need in the United States. I mean, imagine all these data centers that have AI using one of these designed nuclear reactor plants. Now, I assume that they've been designed and manufactured by private industry. There are a bunch of nuclear companies developing small nuclear reactors. There's a bunch of them out there, and evaluations have gone up quite a bit because the anticipation is they will be used for these data centers. But the fact is the Energy Department has not approved one of these reactors for civilian use in a very long time. But if you get a proof of concept on military bases, maybe we can then start using nuclear reactors for civilian purposes as well. So I think this is really good news. And this is the one positive that government can play in technology. The reality is that, for example, the semiconductor, the first uses for the semiconductor were military, in missiles and other type of ballistic missiles and other types of military technologies. So it was the Defense Department buying large quantities of semiconductors that basically created the semiconductor industry, drove the prices and the quality of semiconductors down to the point where they could be used for civilian applications. And that is the kind of government intervention I have no problem with. You're buying a product you actually need for a purpose that is a legitimate purpose of government defense, And by doing so, you're helping create new industries and new technologies and new things that happen and then can be used. But you're not trying to control those industries. You're just buying from them. And here, if we get the Defense Department buying large quantities of these small nuclear reactors, the prices of the reactors will come down, the technology will improve, and at some point they will become incredibly economic for data centers and other uses for these nuclear reactors. And this is the kind of synergy that can exist and should exist between the Defense Department and the private sector. And this does not involve actually owning any private companies, to I guess the disappointment of the Trump administration. All right. That, my friends, is the news for Wednesday, October 16th. And we will continue this on Friday. No news tomorrow. And I expect world leaders and everybody else in the world to just tone it down for the next couple of days, so we don't have breaking news tomorrow that I miss reporting on. All right, let's see. Reminder that we are $35 short of our first hour goal. It would be great if we achieved that. It would be great if we achieved the second hour goal. So you should jump in. Jump in with support. You can do that with stickers where you don't have to ask a question. You can ask a question, make a comment, suggestion, anything you want, and I read it. And you could do it at any, $2 or $500. $500 is the max. Either way, you help us reach our goals, and you help fund the show. A show funded through contributions from you, the listener and the watcher. You can also support the show on a monthly basis, kind of a regular basis, by going to a Patreon or to Subscribestar. I haven't done Subscribestar in a long time, but Patreon is better, or PayPal, putting in your Yaron Brook show and then becoming a monthly supporter, and that is fantastic. At the $10 or more a month level, you get the podcast version of this show with no commercials on YouTube, or not on YouTube, on Apple Podcast or whatever podcasting app you have, with no commercials. So $10 or more, that's all. All right, and then finally, we have 3 sponsors. Hendershotwealth.com/YBS, Hendershot with 2 T's. Hendershot Wealth, it offers products that can save you a lot of money on capital gains taxes by deferring that tax, and in some cases eliminating it. Check them out. You can check out my interview with Robert Hendershot on the sponsors playlist. It's an interesting interview. You should check it out. And if you find it worthwhile, then check out the website, HendershotWealth, one word, .com/YBS. Ayn Rand Institute, it wants to remind you all that the deadline for the Atlas Shrugged essay contest is coming up. It's October 31st. To find out more information about the essay contest, about how to qualify, what essay to write, and where to send it, and all of that, check out AynRand.org/start here. AynRand.org/start here. And finally, Alex Epstein is the world-leading commentator on all things energy. For example, nuclear energy. He writes a lot about nuclear energy, the what is holding back nuclear energy production in the United States, what needs to happen. Writes a lot about rare earth materials. Check Alex out. You'll learn a lot. AlexEpstein.substack.com. 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 God, sometimes I slip. All right. Let's see. Some stickers. Thank you, Roland. Thank you, Jonathan. Jonathan did 4 of these. Thank you, Thomas. Let's see some other stickers. Nick and Paul and Mike and Ryan and Paul again and Jonathan and Jonathan and Jonathan and Jonathan. Thank you, guys. Really appreciate the support. You too can support the show just with the sticker right at the bottom screen there. Just click on the $sign, and you can help make this show possible. All right, let's jump in with super chats. David, $50. Thank you, David. I've heard you say that environmentalism is D2, But isn't it more akin to religious belief? So won't environmentalism be M2? At the end of the day, no. There's no dogma. There's no scripture. There's no integrating a principle. What's good for nature doesn't really lead you anywhere. It basically is self-destructive. It's also, of course, what's good for nature means we shouldn't exist. So it's nihilistic towards man by definition, because man is anti-nature, man is destructive of nature, man should be destroyed for the sake of nature. And that is D2. That is kind of the disintegration, the nihilism that D2 leads to. It's just like egalitarianism. You can say egalitarianism is a type of religion, the religion of equality, and you could phrase it into all kinds of religion terms. But there's no there's no agenda. There's no ideology. It's just destruction all the way through. It's just, knocking people down and destroying achievement and destroying the good. It's nihilism all the way through. And I think environmentalism, when taken seriously, when taken as an ideology, when taken almost as a religion, it is that. The thing that makes religion palatable and the reason religion can be successful and is appealing to people is because it presents itself as pro-man. It presents itself as leading to your salvation. Presents itself as has solutions to things. It doesn't try to just destroy everything from beginning to end, even though ultimately the consequences of that. But it sells itself and it promotes itself as caring and as working for your benefit. Right? Thanks, David. Noah. Hey, Yaron, it's Mr. Zipzitter. Please tell your audience I have a new original song posted called Reject. Search for Reject by Mr. Okay, so the Mr. is Trip, Tripzter. So one word. Tripzter. He has a new song called Reject. You can check it out. Just search Mr. Tripzter. Tripzter. Thank you, Noah. Andrew, does altruism render a person effectively dumb in the area of morality, as in blind and deaf to facts? Well, I mean, certainly they don't see it that way because to them, being altruistic is morality. So they view everything they're looking at as morality, and sacrifice and all of that is morality. It makes it, once they accept altruism as morality, it makes it very, very difficult to get them to think outside of that paradigm, outside of that context. And if when you come and say selfishness is a virtue, they immediately try to put it into the framework of altruism, and it doesn't compute, and they immediately reject it, and they don't even listen. They can't even hear you. Or they think, okay, so if I act self-interestedly in this case, I can make more money, so then I can sacrifice more later. I can give away more later. Or things like that. This is the effective altruists do this, right? So if I work really, really hard and make a lot of money today, which is deemed selfish, I can. So they try to, whatever you tell them in terms of self-interest, they'll try to massage, they'll try to evade into altruism, into their framework, because it's the only framework they can think of when it comes to morality. Andrew says, how would you describe to an everyday smart non-objectivist as to why selfishness is good in a highly condensed form? Well, I mean, I would say that your life is all you have. You have one life, and to live it successfully takes real effort and real guidance. And you need morality for that. A morality that's focused on living your life, on living your life well, to and to be able to achieve your happiness. And that means focusing and emphasizing the things that are going to lead you to be happy. And that's what it means to be selfish. What it means to be selfish is to place your interests, i.e. your survival, and your thriving and your flourishing and your happiness as your defining purpose. And evaluate everything else based on that standard. That is the standard. Life, your individual life, is not the standard for evaluating every value out there. What is a value to you and what is not? So you should be selfish because all you have is your life. And living. Living is the only context in which morality even comes into being. I mean, your starting point is life. And that should be how you start your moral thinking. And it's your life. So by definition, it's selfish. Michael, are Europeans getting poorer while Americans are getting richer? Or are Europeans just getting richer at a snail pace compared to us? Well, I don't know if it's a snail pace, but Europeans are getting richer slower than Americans are getting richer. And again, it depends which Europeans. Poles are getting richer faster than Americans. But most Europeans, Germans, French, Spaniards, Italians, UK, but are getting richer, but at a slower pace than we are. Their economies are still growing, and GDP per capita is still growing, but at a smaller rate than it is in the United States. And it's not growing fast in the United States. It's just growing faster. Madhu Vaush, something like that. You can call me M. Okay, M. I'm from India, a lots of O's, timeless fan. The impact you've had on my life and thinking is invaluable. Thank you for everything. Wow, thank you, M. I really, really appreciate that. I apologize that I butchered your name. So I really appreciate that. And yeah, thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to be having an impact on people's lives. That doodle bunny, you can't blame your followers for not making Super Chat goals when you take weeks off at a time or change your show start times erratically. Revenue growth requires consistency, and you're proud. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. This is the show. I'm asking you to support it because you listen. You can support it. If you don't want to, don't. But I think that integrity suggests that if you don't support it, you kind of shouldn't listen. That is, there's a trade going on. So these are the terms. I'm not pretending otherwise. I'm not telling you that it's not. I'm not telling you that I'm going to produce a show that's always going to be in the same time and I'm never going to take time off to go travel. I'm telling you that the show is going to have different starting times and it's going to be on and off. But I'd appreciate it if you supported the shows that do happen when they happen. And if you don't want to, you don't have to, of course. But again, there's a question of if you're listening, as erratically as it might be. Now, it is true. What you're saying is that if I had a better marketing strategy, if I had a consistent time every day, and I never traveled, and I only did the show, then revenue would grow faster. Fine, I know that. I know what I'm giving up. Of course, the revenue I generate by traveling exceeds the revenue I would get if I stayed put. So, but this is the show. Support it to the level that you think it's worth it. Don't support it beyond the value that it represents in your life. If it is so damaging, the erratic nature of the start times, that you think that's such a disvalue to you that you don't want to support the show, don't. But I know you do support the show. You ask Super Chat questions. And I've had a $250 an hour goal on the show for a long, long time, knowing the erratic nature of it. Maybe if I did it consistently, I would raise the goal for an hour show to 300 or 500. I don't know. But right now, that's the goal. We make it most times, not always. It would be great if we made it all the time, but that's up to you, not up to me. That Durabani says, if America collapses into dictatorship, would you say the Objectivist project has been a failure, or it was simply started too late to stop our downfall? I mean, I don't know if too late or too early, but it didn't stop the downfall. Was it a failure? Yes, in a sense that it didn't stop the downfall. Could the Objectivist project could have been done better or differently? I haven't heard anybody propose an alternative that sounded better to me. But yeah, I mean, dictatorship would be a failure of all of those of us who believe that it shouldn't happen or are fighting to stop it. But it's quite possible that nothing we could do will stop it. And I don't think objectivism will be a failure long term, because I think long term it will win. That long term could be 50 years, it could be 100 years, it could be 20 years. I don't know. Probably not 20. Probably more like 50 or 100. Ultimately to win, but in the short run, it might fail to win. So unless you have a suggestion on how to make it better, on how to win, I'm not sure what the point is on dwelling on all that. Michael, every post of a released Palestinian has the caption like, he spent 20 years torn from his family, and then a quick Google search reveals he blew up a school bus. Yes. I mean, these are murderers. These are murderers. You should have zero sympathy for them. And the people out there, I just saw a video of, what's his name? Maishin, the guy who was very pro-Russia. And everybody loved him because he supposedly predicted the Russian invasion, whose name I can't pronounce. Anyway, I just saw him, lambasting Trump and Netanyahu as war criminals, and the prisoner, the exchange of hostages. This is the language they use. These are murderers that have been released, and again, Israel should have implemented the death penalty. They should all be dead. Mersheimer, yeah, something like that. A real scumbag, a real horrible person, and I said this before I knew he was so pro-Palestinian. I said this when he was talking about Russia and Ukraine. Not a good thinker, and not a good intellectual. Michael, I'm amazed how childlike many of these young adults act, like highly ignorant for being in an educational setting. I'm not sure exactly who you're talking about. Maybe young Republicans? I'm not sure. But yeah. I Like Numbers says, happy birthday, Leonard Peikoff. Yes, today is formally Leonard Peikoff's birthday. He is today 92 years old. Leonard Peikoff is one of the great minds in history. He is, my debt to him is beyond anything I can describe. He has, to a large extent, shaped my life. What I know, Ayn Rand, but then second is Leonard Peikoff. And he has been, for many, many years, a friend. Some of those years a very close friend. So yeah, Leonard is great. He's 92 years old. So just take that into account. Consider that as part of your context for everything. He says he does. He's 92 years old. Yeah, it's takes a toll. Life takes age takes a toll on you. But yes, happy birthday, Leonard. And how can we get legislation cuts if Democrats win the midterms? Well, you cut you do the cuts before the Democrats win the midterms. I mean, one of the reasons I want Democrats to win the midterms is because Republicans have failed to make legislative cuts. They had the opportunity to make legislative cuts in the big, beautiful bill, which was a bill that didn't need any Democratic votes. It could pass with just 51 votes in the Senate, and Republicans had those votes. It could pass in the House. The House, they had a majority, and they refused to cut spending. Trump is doing it through executive order, which is not the right way to do it, not a good way to do it, an ultimately destructive way because it gives the executive too much power. And Republicans have the majority in the House, have the majority in the Senate, have the presidency right now. And the one thing of all the things they want to do, the one things they're not doing, is cutting spending. So why vote for them? If they're not going to cut spending, might as well vote for Democrats. Friend Harper. The most annoying part of this situation to me is seeing people saying, oh, so much for anarcho-capitalist policy. It has to be bailed out because it has failed when it comes to Milei. Yeah, I mean, it's sad that they view anything as an anarcho-capitalist policy. It wasn't an anarcho-capitalist. So if they blame it on anarcho-capitalism, that's good. I'm happy. If they blame it on capitalism or on free markets, then I'd be sad. But yeah, it is sad because they will blame it to some extent on that. It's terrible because it will be blamed on the good stuff that Milei did. There's no question about that. And anarcho-capitalism would be worse for Argentina than socialism. I mean, anarcho-capitalism is the equivalent of communism because it basically legitimizes force and it becomes anarchy, which is shooting in the streets, which ultimately leads to authoritarianism. So it's about as bad as you can do. But the fact that Milei is being bailed out is not good for anything. And I don't know that he needs it. Maybe he needs it because he couldn't get all his policies through Congress. But we'll see what happens in the election. I'm still hoping he wins in the election and can do the things that are necessary to make Argentina prosperous. Justin says, keep up the amazing work. Thank you. Thank you, Justin. Really appreciate that. Raphael says, hi, Yaron. I was wondering, what's your view on hope? It's often used in a spiritual or faith-based way, but can this emotion exist within reason? I'll tell you, Leonard Peikoff, since we talked about Leonard, is very negative on hope. I mean, at least he was very negative with me on hope. So he whenever you say something like hope, so-and-so, he would say, this is years ago, hope is an irrational emotion. I mean, it's based on faith, and so very negative. So I don't know if you can really, I mean, I guess you can create a way to use it that is consistent with reason. That is to say, since we don't know what's going to happen in the future, I am hopeful that I'm hopeful that good things will come. But since you don't have control over it, hope is usually when you don't have control. So it's placing a wish above reality in a sense. So Leonard at least has been very negative about it and always viewed it as bad. I think you can probably think of some way to use it positively, but you have to be careful. Right? Harrison says, when Antifa attacked you in the UK in 2017-18, what happened to the flag you captured from them? What do you think of Antifa today? What's his name who I was with? Who was the guy up on stage with me? God, I forget his name. He's become like a really mainstream conservative type, right-wing conservative type, pretty bad. Sargon of Akkad, yeah. So Sargon took the flag, so I let him take the flag. He's much better at using Carl Benjamin. He's much better at using stuff like that for marketing purposes than I am. So he took the flag. I assume he still has it somewhere, as far as I know. What I think of Antifa today, same as I've always thought about it. They are thugs. They're violent thugs. They're left-wing nuts. I think they're really, really evil and bad, as anybody who initiates force is. They're anti-free speech. They are nihilists in that they hate Western civilization. They hate the concept of freedom of speech. And they basically hate every value that I hold dear. They hate. I think they're terrible, horrible. And to the extent that they use violence, it's a matter for the police. They should be arrested and they should be tried and they should be prosecuted. And one of the great failures of most Western governments has been that in cases on campuses where violence has been used to try or to successfully or as an attempt to silence people, they have not been prosecuted for the violence that they've committed. So that's a failure, a real failure of the West. Are they a terrorist organization? I think it's very difficult. You have to really have a clear definition of what a terrorist organization is. The Trump administration has just defined them as a terrorist organization. It's very dangerous to throw around the term terrorists. They're a violent gang, and they should be treated as a violent gang. Terrorism should be, probably should be left to more dangerous organizations than Antifa. But yeah, they should be stopped. All right, guys. Thank you. I appreciate it. And thanks to all the super chatters. And I will see you again on Friday. Sorry, Doodle Bunny, that I'm traveling again. I'll tell you on Friday or on Saturday why I'm traveling. But I will talk to you soon. Bye, everybody. Have a great rest of your week.